introduction. Thank you so much. I guess, okay, that's the clicker. Um, I think we're running a little behind schedule, and maybe a lot of you are hungry, so I'll keep it very quick. I'll try to wrap up in 10, 15 minutes. So I was asked to speak on, customer focus or customer experience. Customer experience, by the way, is a heavily used word at one of my ex-companies, Google. But I'm a little fussy about articulation. So I think Google believes calls it customer experience. I think some of the larger other companies like Apple, every keynote starts with the CSAT score, the customer satisfaction score of the latest iPhone 11 is, whatever, 99% or something. I think the articulation I personally like a lot is customer obsession, heavily used by Amazon actually. Um, I think obsession is on its own a negative word. Uh, it's like unhealthy fixation or typically obsession is not considered positive, but I really like the word when used along with customer focus. I feel it is the word is emotionally charged. It shows the passion with a single threaded focus with which one has to think about every decision. So that's why I think today's title we changed slightly to customer obsession. Um, Before I jump into the actual slide, this is a small plug, a little bit about us, MX Player. In case you haven't heard about us, we've been around, small company, we've been around for a few years. Very quickly, we have scaled to 100 million daily active users, 270 million monthly actives. I think outside of course, the Google family of apps and the Facebook family of apps, I don't know many other apps that have managed to get a billion downloads organically. Um, I think one other metric that stands out to me, at least, is we get. I think the formatting got messed up on the screen, but we get 1.5 million organic downloads every day. Just to put this number in perspective, I think Digital India is growing really fast. Uh, and the top line of Digital India, right, the smartphones. We probably sell 150 million smartphones in India across all OEMs, give or take. So if I divide 150 million by 365 days, we sell 500,000 phones every day. And MX Player gets 1.5 million downloads. So we're growing 3 times the rate at which Digital India is growing. So I think that's something we are very proud of. But anyway, moving away, and obviously, the reason I also set this context is everything we do, and I think the reason we are growing at this rate is because our everyday decisions are focused around the customer. I'll just have 4 slides about how we operate and how we focus on customer. So it'll be very quick. I wanted to start the first slide with a small story. It's a old, it's probably 6, 7 year old story, but I think it's still very relevant in today's context. This is back when my early days at Amazon, probably my first quarter at Amazon. I was fortunate. I was invited to a meeting where, the man himself, Jeff Bezos, was attending the meeting. Typically, I don't know if you guys if anyone has worked at Amazon, typical meeting style is that the guy who's organizing the meeting, he writes a one-page document, and that document then can have any amount of data on the back, but the main doc is 1 page, where he sets the context and then gives a recommendation. For the first 10 minutes, no one is allowed to speak. Everyone reads the document quietly. It's like pin drop silence for the first 10 minutes in a meeting. And then you go around the circle, everyone comments, it comes back to the organizer, and he concludes. That's it. No, there is no back and forth allowed in Amazon meetings. And typically, if the meeting is led by Jeff Bezos, then the SVP team will sit on the main table, and they'll have lots of product managers in the background, all ready with their Excels in case anyone wants extra information to make decision on the spot. So I was at that time one of the PMs sitting in the background. And like every other meeting, it happened. Unfortunately, we didn't reach a conclusion. Uh, what stood out to me was that in that meeting, the chair right next to Jeff Bezos was empty, and throughout the meeting, all I could think of was, I wish I'd sat there, right? But couldn't gather the guts, so sat somewhere in the back. Next week, we had a follow-up meeting in which we had to conclude. Again, all the VPs sat on the main table. Interestingly, again, the chair next to him, the chair on his right was empty. And I kept debating with myself if I should go there, if I should not go there. Eventually, sat down on one of the back seats. Uh, and the meeting got done. Jeff concluded. And finally, I gathered guts. At the end of the meeting, I went to him and I told him, I introduced myself and I said, this is my first quarter here, and I love the culture here. We are so customer obsessed. We think big. We dive so deep into data. But I'm really surprised that after all this talk, there's such a culture of fear that no one can sit next to you. We talk about, we are organizationally flat and anyone can say anything to Jeff, but people are even scared to sit next to you. That's when he laughed, and he said, "I wait for someone like you to ask me a question like this," and then he stalled everyone in the room who was leaving, and said that and then said that he wants to address my question. And he started saying that now over the last 5-6 years, I've reached a situation where I don't build myself. All I do is I attend meetings, and in these meetings, I wish that this one person was with me. And I wish he could help me make all these decisions. And my mind was running that, oh my God, was there a co-founder who left who I didn't know? Did he have a right hand that some mysterious right hand who helps him all the time? And I was very confused. And slowly, he clarified what he meant, that ideally, every product decision, whether a feature should be built or not, whether it should be prioritized or not, what pricing we should have, ideally, every decision should be made by the customer. And unfortunately, he's the only person who's missing in every meeting. So I think this empty chair sort of reminds him of putting himself in that chair and then making the decision from that person's perspective. So I think very, very powerful thought. It's, a lot of visionaries have their own quirk. This is one of his quirks. Nobody can sit on his right side. It's always empty for the customer. So I thought it's a good way to set context on how passionately some people obsess over customer while making decisions. I think a few other nuances. These are famous quotes. I just put them out there. I think with customer obsession, I think the other thing that we all think about is having a long-term focus. The belief has to be, a lot of companies start doing trade-off between what the customer wants and is it good for my business, what impact will it have on my profitability or unit economics. I think the approach has to be that do good to the customer, and if you do good to the customer and create value for him, in the long term, you'll figure out how to extract that value and how to make a sustainable business. Second thing, I think it happens a lot, especially once you start scaling, is one looks at aggregate data. One looks at the larger trends and then slices the data in certain cohorts and then tries to optimize funnels. I think what gets lost is individual anecdotes. So for example, today at MX Player, we have a really large base, right? 270 million users. We get at least 20,000 Play Store reviews every day, and a lot of social media mentions. And we sit and read. So the largest team that I have today is customer support. It's not product, it's not tech. We sit and read every review. The product managers mandatorily once every 15 days have to stop their work and from morning to evening just read customer reviews. So I think I can't stress enough, anecdotes are as important as the story that the aggregate data tells. So moving to second slide, 2 out of my 4 slides. I think the other thing that we really believe in customer obsession is everything starts at the customer and then you work backwards. I just wanted to explain It's maybe it's boring for some people, but I really like to explain in detail what that means to me. So, for example, the first time, when I got a product management break, um even I was surprised by this. On day one, I had to write a press release, right? And I'm not from PR, I'm not from marketing, never had done that before. But I think that's the best way. If you have a business idea, the first thing one should do is write a press release that may never actually see light of day, but you should write it, and then typically in tech companies, all your peers would read that press release, and then they would vote. If this press release went out today, would it create a buzz in the market? Would the customers get excited? And if the answer to that is no, the idea is killed right there. But only if the answer is yes, typically in a company like Google or Amazon, you would then get one or two headcounts. You would get one finance guy, one business guy. The business guy will typically tell you, okay, this is the kind of volume this product can see. This is how we'll price it. This is how we'll differentiate it. The finance guy will probably do a lot of Excel math and say this will be the NPV, this will be the IRR, and does it make financial sense to even do all this? And if you get blessed after those two steps, that is when the whole jabang starts. You get a large budget and you start building the product and you do QA and then you iteratively try and improve it. But I think the point here is working backwards. By the way, I'm saying all of this as though this is the only truth. There are a lot of companies who will argue that this is absolutely the wrong way of doing business. For example, I said, I think the first point I made was that you should listen to your customers. And I think there are very famous visionaries who have quoted exact opposite. I think Henry Ford said that if I asked my customers what they wanted, I would have just built a faster horse and never built a car. So I'm sure there are people who would disagree. Samsung would never work backwards, never. So, for example, what Samsung does is they identify key metrics that matter to them, and then just focus on R&D on those metrics. So, for example, if they have a LCD team, a screen, all they would do is say, okay, I need to make the screen thinner, I need to make the screen lighter, and I need the screen to consume less battery, and that's it. And they would just focus they would never go and ask the customer what he wants. They know what their metrics are, and once the screen becomes so thin that it can fold, then some other PM picks it up and says, okay, I'll fold the phone also and maybe show SMSs there. It wasn't that they went to the customer and the customer said, one day I want a curved phone on which the SMS comes on the edge of the phone, right? Certainly that is not how Samsung works. So while I am paranoid about working backwards and customer focus, I'm sure people have built very successful businesses thinking exactly the opposite, that focus forward, not backward. So I think that's at least my second advice. I still believe in working backwards. Third, I would say, we all talk about customer obsession and then go back to our daily work. And eventually, how meetings happen is, especially, we are in OTT space. A typical day for a lot of us would be, okay, what features does Hotstar have? What does Netflix have? What does Amazon Video have? Start putting all the features next to each other, check the ones that you have, then find out where the gap is, and that's your roadmap. And then you start thinking, can I add one or two additional features? That will be my differentiation. Based on my differentiation, I'll charge a price premium. And in the long term, I'll figure out how to make this difference sustainable, right? And I think the buzzword is sustainable competitive advantage is what one needs to succeed. I think this is absolutely the wrong way of doing business. I don't think one should ever obsess about competitors. I think one can keep an eye, one can have a decent sense of what the competitors may do, but if you obsess over your competitors, most likely you'll never innovate, you'll never be ahead of the curve. So I think that's my third customer obsession point. And last is more than a point. I just wanted to give a few examples that at various stages, even in some of the best companies, I've heard smart people challenge some obvious things. I think I've laid down 3 examples. The first one, this is an Amazon retail team, and so in India, actually, DVD business is not a large business. In US, even back in 2012, just selling DVDs was $1 billion business. Just selling DVDs. People actually bought DVDs on Amazon.com. And when someone wrote a PR FAQ, the step one, that he wants to start a DVD rental business, the retail team, some of the senior leaders went berserk. They were like, so you are saying that the DVD that sells for $15, I'll start renting for $1 or $2. You want to shrink the pie. You want to shrink that $1 billion business into a few $100 million business. How stupid is that idea? Why would anyone want to do that? And I think the big point that some of the people in that room were missing was that customers always get what they want. If you don't start the retail business, someone would. And of course, Netflix started it, Hollywood Video started it, Blockbuster started it. DVD rental business was a huge business in US for the longest time. So thinking that if you don't do it, customers won't get that benefit is a very flawed thought process. I think a similar example was when Amazon started writing customer reviews. We got so many calls from our suppliers, and some of them were like extremely emotional. They told us that maybe you don't even know how to do your business right. The most stupid thing to do is to write reviews. Reviews inherently have a negative bias. So if you buy something and you really like it, very often you would not take that extra effort to go write a review. But if you are very unhappy or very irritated, if the product is broken when it reaches you or doesn't work as you want, sure as hell you would go give it a 1 star. So inherently, reviews have negative bias. Certainly, reviews have fraud. People like to inflate their own reviews. People hire people, pay other people to write bad reviews for their competitors. It's very hard to even understand which review is fraudulent, which one is not. So, I mean, people just abuse in reviews. There are frustrated people out there who just abuse. That's it. There is no review. So, most reviews when Amazon started off were negative, were abusive, and did not give the honest picture of the product. And almost every supplier called us and told us that if we don't take down the reviews, they would stop selling on Amazon. And of course, I think the sense prevailed, and everyone felt that this is good for the customers. Customers like transparency. And in the long run, this will settle down. And I think one of the reasons why Amazon e-commerce in US 10 years ago really took off was because they stuck to this and didn't delete the reviews or didn't edit the reviews or didn't moderate the reviews even in the early days. I think the third example, this is something that happened with me most recently. I was at Reliance Jio. Reliance Jio, of course, by that now, of course, the investment is much larger. But back when I was in Jio, I think they'd already invested $20 billion in telecom infrastructure, which is a large number, a lot of zeros, like 1.5 lakh crores, right? And I had a very small budget. I had a few 100 crore budget to make digital media products. So think of it as video streaming, audio streaming, etc. And I had a simple feature on my roadmap that I want to allow customers to download those movies or download those songs. And this is back in 2014. This is before, today most apps have download, right? I think in 2015 is when YouTube launched download. In 2016, I think Amazon launched download, and today everyone has it. So back in 2014, we were trying to advocate internally that it's a very, it'll help the customer. It adds to the convenience. It's a no-brainer, has to be done. And the argument was that we have invested, 1.5 lakh crores to sell bits and bytes, and we want ROI on that. And on the flip side, we have invested 100 crores in your business, and you think that the customer should just download the song instead of streaming it 100 times. So you want to reduce my ROI by 100x in my primary business so that I can get ROI on the small business. Like, how stupid is that thought? And of course, we have to explain that customers always get what they want. And if we won't give it, for sure, our competitors will give it, and customers anyway won't stream a song 100 times. They will download. The question is on your service or a competitive service. So I think that's it. I think these were the big 4 points. I think just wanted to end with some logos. These are all companies which at one time were multi-billion-dollar, market leading in their categories. And I think somewhere along the way, I would say that they lost their customer focus. I think the biggest example is Kodak. Maybe some of you don't know, Kodak actually invented digital SLRs. The first digital SLR was made at Kodak, and the CEO, and at that time, so this is during my growing up days, the reel of a Kodak camera used to sell for 250 rupees, and it had 90% profit margin. Almost all of Kodak, like if you added the total revenue of the reels, it equaled the total profitability of Kodak globally. And the CEO stood up and said that, so you want me to kill my entire profitability to make a slightly better camera? And he killed that project. He didn't let anyone hear about it. And of course, Canon and Nikon and 10 other companies made digital SLRs, and nobody really buys. I mean, maybe now Kodak is coming back. But yeah, I think most of these companies didn't really listen to what customer want. And that's why they're on the slide. That's it. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to me. And yeah, if you have any questions, happy to answer.
We're